So for some reason, I can't talk today. I've restarted this video so many times, but one more time. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hello. My name is Butch, and today I'm going to film my favorite books of 2023. And I'm very excited because this was a better year, reading-wise, than 2022, which I'm so happy about. And it's the last video in the quartet of favorite books because I started my channel in my freshman year of university and now I'm in my senior year. So I've done this video, including this one, 4 times. This year I'm gonna do it in chronological order, not from bottom to the top, like which one is my one favorite, because this year I couldn't really pick what is my one favorite book. Like there are so many that I loved and I can't pick. I'm sorry. But I also went through like an interesting journey with my reading this year because my life kind of reflected my reading, and you're gonna see how that happened in this video. But without further ado, the first book I read in 2023 ended up being in this video. So I started the year strong with Babel by R.F. Kuang. So I love this book for many reasons. Like it's a book that talks about racism, imperialism, performative allyship, the revolution, and how sometimes it's necessary to have violence in a revolution in order to succeed. But if you want to know like the bare bones of the story, basically the main character, Robin, is a child when his parents die, and he's from China, and he's adopted by this old white rich dude from England. And he takes him there and educates him and also gives him a roof, but at the same time abuses him a lot. And when he grows up and is 18, he goes to Oxford, specifically Babel, which is like the linguistics institution within Oxford. And he starts learning how to use his language skills for magic, but he also starts learning what is happening in the world, and his horizons open up, and he also makes some friends that are in similar positions to him. It's such a good book. It's 500 pages, but it's totally worth it. I love R.F. Kuang so much. I did also read Yellowface this year, but it did not end up being in my favorites. But I want to read the Poppy Ward trilogy because her writing shines in fantasy. And even though this is like very low fantasy, it's more like literary historical fiction with like a lot of political stuff going on. Please read it if you haven't already. I feel like everybody has read it at this point, but yeah. Next, I read Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Mouse by Art Spiegelman, which is a graphic memoir telling the story of his father living through World War II, and also not just hiding from the Nazis, but also being in the concentration camps as well. It's a very raw story and you can learn so much from it. It's kind of hard to say like I really enjoyed reading it because like you're not supposed to enjoy people suffering because this is like a real story. But I really appreciate what it does for the world and for art, and I'm very happy that Art Spiegelman took the time to write and illustrate everything. And the way it's told is also very interesting because the Nazis are portrayed as cats and Jews are portrayed as mice, and also other people like Americans are dogs and French people are rabbits, I think. So it's a very nice allegory like that. And yeah, I really recommend it. If you are a graphic novel fan, you have to read this. This is like one of the ones that you have to read, you know? Moving on, I read The Very Nice Box by Eve Gleichman and Laura Blackett. I always struggle to remember their names, but this is a book written by 2 authors, and I actually was recommended this book from A Sunny Book Nook, which is a channel that I watch on YouTube. This was one of my favorite books for a very long time, until September when this book was dethroned by another book. But it's basically about this 30-year-old-ish young woman named Ava, and she works as an engineer in Stada, which is a company And she, well, not so recently, like 5 years ago, she suffered through a very traumatic event where her fiance, who was a woman, died in a car accident along with her parents. And ever since then, she has not had anyone else in her life romantically. She's been very closed off. And one day, out of the blue, this guy becomes the CEO of the company. And that's where shit starts to go down. Like, I love a workplace novel. I love like a novel that talks about like relationships, especially like a little bit later in life. It has a very good ending, and there's definitely some very interesting plot twists that I was like, I did not see that coming. So yeah, I love this book so much. And it's like a queer slash bisexual book that is done in an interesting way, because most of the time you have like the bi woman who has always been with men who's finally finding her attraction or discovering her attraction to women. This one is like the opposite. She was with a woman before, but now there's this guy who just came to the company. Now we're at summer vacation. I have just finished my 3rd year. And this is where shit starts to hit the fan in my life. But before all of that happens, I read Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg. A Bible, a lesbian and trans Bible. If you're queer, please read this book. You will learn so much. You will feel so much. I feel like I need to reread this book a few years down the line, because sure, I got a lot from it now, but I feel like I will get more from it later, if you know what I mean, you know? This book tells a story of this girl, I hesitate to call them girl, you know, because they do transition a little in the novel, but their name, I will use they, them, just to be safe, even though in the novel, she is also used to refer to them, but I'm gonna use them, or she, I'll interchange. So she's called Jess, and she lives in Buffalo, and she's growing up, and she's starting to discover that she's not like other girls. Oh my god, Stone Butch Blues, the blueprint of I'm not like other girls, because I'm a lesbian. So Jess is discovering that she's not like other girls because she wants to be masculine. She wants to be like a boy. She wants to wear boyish clothes, and she like her. It's not just like her appearance. Her character is more masculine, and she's also slowly discovering that she likes girls and that she's a butch lesbian. But living in the 50s, obviously it was not an easy life to be a butch lesbian, and you can see like the levels of trauma are comparable to A Little Life, which is one of my favorite books of all time, but also has like a lot of traumatic events happening. So much happens in this book, and it takes you throughout Jess's entire life almost, and it's a Bible. Like, I don't want to spoil anything else, like just read it. So yeah. Next, I read Old Enough by Haley Jacobson, who is a bisexual author that is like very open, like talks about her bisexuality a lot on the internet. I followed her on Instagram and on TikTok, and I knew that she was coming out with this book. And this is also like my most anticipated book of 2023. Like, I was waiting. I bought this book the day it came out. And at this time, I still identified as bisexual, but I'll tell you later what happened. This book talks about a young girl in university, like me, but not like in STEM. She's not in STEM. I don't know what she's pursuing, probably like creative writing, but I'm not that sure. It's not talked about a lot in the book. But she comes out as bisexual in the novel. It's not really like a moment in the novel, like when the novel starts, like, she's already accepted her bisexuality. And it talks about how in the process of accepting her queerness, she makes her queer friends and is involved in the queer campus life, and also starts falling for a very cute trans-masc non-binary character named Wes. But it also goes back and forth into like 2 timelines, and the other timeline is her being in high school, and it tells the story of her experiencing SA from her best friend's brother, and how also her friendship with her prior childhood best friend kind of suffered from that. I loved how there was so much good queer representation. Like, there's polyamorous characters who we rarely see on books. There's bisexual main characters who prioritize their queerness, and not just like romantically, but like socially and like in their views and how they live their life, which is something I feel like even in real life I barely see sometimes. Like, girls will say, or boys will say they're bisexual, but nothing about them like reflects that. Sure, you can have a straight relationship and still be like actively supporting the LGBT community, but we rarely see that. So I loved it. I love it so much. We need more bisexual, like good bisexual representation, you know? Next, I read I Who Have Never Known Men. And this is a French translated book. It was written in like the 90s, but it's so good and it feels so modern and so fresh. And oh my gosh, it's one of the most bleak and depressing books, but also I couldn't stop reading it. And if you finish it, you have to go back to the beginning, because the beginning doesn't make sense in the beginning, but after you have read it, go back and it will make sense. And then after that, I cried. Like, I broke down. I couldn't hold myself together anymore. But basically, there's like 40 women in a basement underground, and they just live there. And there's some men that give them food at the same time every day. But they don't know how to read, they don't know how to write, they don't measure time, they don't have clocks. They're just there, and they live there in isolation. Until one moment, something happens, and they get a chance to escape. That's all I'm gonna tell you. This is a moment that I finally accept that I'm lesbian. So, a lot of things happened this year, and I know I've said in other videos on this channel that I'm bisexual, that I don't think I'm a lesbian, but I feel like every single one of us has a journey in life, and there are certain points that we haven't experienced certain things yet, and when we do experience them, then that sheds more light into who we are, and we learn more about ourselves. And that's what happened. I learned something that I didn't know about myself, and I can confidently say I do not like men, and I am a lesbian. But I had to experience certain things in order to come to that realization. So this is where I just started binging a lot of lesbian classic books, and a lot of them ended up on this list. So without further ado, let's get into it. I, first of all, read The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall, which is, I believe, the first book ever that was written that has like a proto-Butch lesbian main character. I know Stone Butch Blue is like a big classic regarding like Butch lesbians, but this one came before that. And this was the book that kind of, I guess, dethroned The Very Nice Box, because I just loved it so much. It talks about the main character, Steven, who also, similarly to Jess, like growing up, very masculine, very masked, and not liking guys, realizing that she likes girls. It's like the classic Butch lesbian experience. I'm not Butch, by the way, if you couldn't tell. I am very femme. I'm a femme lesbian. I mean, very femme. I wouldn't say I'm very femme. I like playing sports. And most of the time I don't do makeup. Like this, I haven't done in months. Like, I never wear makeup daily. But today is a special video because I'm filming. So this book is a little long, it's a little slow, and you have to be like a seasoned classics reader in order to like endure everything, but there are some passages that just break you. Like there's one in the middle where Stephen is talking to her lover on that section of the book, because she doesn't have just one lover. But she basically says, like, I cannot protect you. All I can do is love you, because the world is built in a way that queer love is not celebrated. And it just broke my heart. I literally made a TikTok about it. I was like, guys, I just read something, and I'm like, I'm crying. But that is so relatable, because 100 years have passed and still pretty much kind of the same. Like, sure, it's better in some ways. Like, I can get married now if I want to in this country. Not in all countries, not in my home country, certainly. But like, my family does not accept me. I still do not have all the freedom to be myself. And like, even a book from 100 years before still talks about the same issues that we're dealing with today. And also, this book has one of the most heart-wrenching endings. I literally cried, and if I have the clip, I'll insert it here.
Fuck this book.
Yeah, a little life level of crying, I would say. Well, maybe not as much as a little life, but it was definitely like sob-worthy, you know? The last 3 lines, knife into my heart. Yeah, sad times. Sad times. But moving on, I read She/He by Minnie Bruce Pratt. And Minnie Bruce Pratt, if you didn't know, is Leslie Feinberg's, or was, partner. And this is her memoir detailing how she first thought she was straight. She married a man for 10 years. She had 2 kids. And then all of a sudden, no, she's lesbian. And she starts dating women. And it details her journey, like woman after woman after woman, until she finally finds Leslie Feinberg, and they're happy and together, and it's wonderful. And this was also one of the books that like I really, really loved. Like, I would say top 4 definitely, because this was the first book I read from a femme lesbian, and I had just like accepted my lesbianism, just accepted my femme lesbianism. So hearing another femme voice was very affirming and validating for me, because I always heard that lesbians are women who are attracted to feminine women. And this was one of the things that held me back from IDing as a lesbian for so long, because I was not attracted to feminine women. I would go on dates with femme girls and I would not feel the spark, until this year I finally met a Butch lesbian, and I discovered all the feelings had been unlocked in me, and now they were finally out. And this book basically talks about that, like how she also felt insecure, I guess, in her lesbianism, and how can it even be real if who she loves is in between a man and a woman, and that's still lesbianism. And people need to learn more about what lesbianism actually is from real lesbians, and not from what they think in their straight little heads. So, and then we arrive to maybe this one is my favorite book, because I loved it so much. I didn't want it to end. Like, that's the sign that you found your favorite book, if you don't want it to end. That's a favorite book. But the thing is, I hesitate because my favorite book is always a narrative. most of the time it has been fiction. In 2021, it was a nonfiction book. It was the Carmen Maria Machado In the Dream House memoir. It's a memoir, it's nonfiction, but it's a story, it's a narrative. This book is neither of those things. This book is The Persistent Desire, edited by Joan Nessel. It's a bunch of short stories, essays, poems, and there's also photography about butch femme lesbians. It's not a story, it's multiple stories or think pieces. And does this count? Yeah, it's a book. I loved it to bits, but it's not a story, so like that's why I hesitate. Like technically, yeah, this I guess is my favorite book. This or The Well of Loneliness are my favorite books of the year. I just can't choose between these two. The Well of Loneliness, it's a wonderful narrative. It's slow in some bits and pieces. And this one is amazing. The Persistent Desire, I love it so much, but it's just not a narrative. So I guess 2023 is the year that we subvert our expectations and we learn to love things that we didn't know we could. So, yay to lesbianism and short story collections. Or like anthologies. I love being femme for butch. Like I hate it at the same time because my dating pool is basically non-existent. So I'm definitely moving out of the Midwest. There is no doubt now that I'm a lesbian. Like I know for sure, thanks to this book, that I am in fact a lesbian. And I wish I owned this book. I tried to buy it. It's like $80 because it's out of print. And I do have like a PDF online so I can revisit it whenever I want. I love it. I'm in love. And then I read 2 more books this year. They're not on the same level as one of them is very similar to A Persistent Desire. But next I read Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane. This is a romance book. I don't think I've ever had a romance on my favorites list. But that's because all the romances I read before were not butch femme. Well, this one, like, the main character is bisexual, so, like, I hesitate to say femme because femme is, like, a lesbian-specific term. But you know what I mean. The main character is bisexual, and the premise of this romance is that she met this butch lesbian a year ago, but it didn't work out. And then a year later, she is kind of arranging a marriage with this guy who's very rich. She's doing it for money. And when she arrives at his house for like winter break holiday festivities, his sister is the butch lesbian she met a year ago. And things start to happen. I loved it. Sure, it's a romance. It's not serious. It's a fun time. It's a wild ride. It's a romance. Like, what do you want? Like, I had a fun time. I loved it. I finally, okay, now that I've discovered that I'm a butch femme lesbian, like femme for butch lesbian, now I know what type of like romance to seek out that makes me feel things. Because back then I would read like straight books or gay man books or even like sapphic books that are femme for femme, and I would feel nothing. And now I don't feel nothing. And then the last book is the Fem Mystique. It's also a short story / essay / poetry collection. But it's shorter than The Persistent Desire and mostly focuses on femmes. So it can get a little repetitive, but I still loved it. I love lesbians, if you couldn't tell. And those were all of the books that I loved this year. And thank you so much for watching and for following me on this journey of lesbianism. Like, I can't believe the first year I made this video, I was aro ace. I thought I could not fall in love. I thought I could not feel anything. And then the second year, I was still like asexual, but panromantic. I still had no idea what my type was. And then last year, I thought I was bi/pan. Maybe I can try. If I try hard enough, I'll find someone. Doesn't matter what gender they are. And now here we are. I'm lesbian. And also, something else that I noticed. I read only 29. Well, it's gonna be 30 by the end of the year. I read only 30 books this year. And last year I read 52. But it was still a better reading year. So, quality over quantity, always. So, thank you for sharing this with me, for sharing this moment of vulnerability and opening up, like sharing your favorite books is a very vulnerable moment. It's like you're sharing your soul with the world. Like, here, this is what lies in my heart. This is what my heart deeply desires. And I'm gonna show it to you. And also something else that I realized, a lot of these books that I read, especially towards the end, they're not easily accessible because they're all kind of out of print. I'm so sorry if you want to read these books badly but you can't find them anywhere. For a lot of these I had to request them from my university, and they were not even in my university. They came from other universities. They shipped them just for me so I could read them. And then I had to return them back. And that was so sad as well. I want to own you, the persistent desire. I want to own you, but I can't. Because you're very expensive. You're out of print. Why are lesbian books out of print? They should never go out of print. Because more lesbians like me and other lesbians who are still figuring it out need to read them. And we can't. Or we have to try very hard. We have to have connections. If somebody's not in university, they're not gonna find these. It's sad being a lesbian sometimes. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!